Should we respect pronouns? Not should we be compelled by the state to respect pronouns, but should we do so without compulsion? One side of the argument is, no, we shouldn't encourage mental illness, versus we should just be polite. What got me started thinking about this? I was reviewing Mags' Quantum Teen series. It has two boys dressed as girls, i.e. trans characters. I was using male pronouns for the boys for accuracy, and female pronouns mostly for Mags for the sake of politeness. But I thought to myself, I misgendered him. But of course, I am not misgendering a man when I use male pronouns. I am being accurate. I have heard the Tumblrites say things like, "You're denying their existence." That's obvious hyperbolic nonsense. And think about it. When you call a man, you are affirming their existence, not denying it. Part of me is sounding an internal alarm when we respect pronouns. It's a warning voice saying, this is a dangerous, slippery slope, and we are continuing to slide. I've heard the argument that gay marriage started it, then we started slipping. 50 years ago, there was no word I can't say on YouTube. Call it the group that hurts children that starts with North American, because people would simply have gotten containers of gas and burned their meeting house. But now the internet makes these groups possible, and people respect their alternative lifestyles. A few years ago, we saw the explosive rise of transgender kids who saw a way to get attention. You have a bunch of kids who don't excel at sports or in academics. They're just fat kids who play video games and live on social media. There's nothing special about them. So how do they stand out? Hey man, take a walk on the wild side. Shaved his legs, he became a she. A Brian becomes a Brianna. Say Brian is just an out-of-shape teenager with a few dozen friends on social media. Puts on lipstick, grows his hair out, borrows his sister's dress, boom. The social media likes start rolling in. Suddenly, Brianna has thousands of friends on social media, and more importantly, he has a voice. Suddenly, he's an expert on feminism, queer representation, and the first time in his life, he has an audience. He is given all the attention he desires. So much sweet dopamine and serotonin. Even his teachers had to learn his new name. He's enjoying that feeling of exerting control. He has a new power. Is he really trans? No, of course not. You think the sudden explosion of trans kids is real? Kids will do anything for attention. We all know this. Know these kids aren't really trans. Some of them are just gay kids who are coming out of the closet. Some are autistic or mentally ill, but most just want attention and internet fame. Brian has 50 friends on Facebook. Brianna has 5,000 and a Patreon account. Kind of must be similar to the feeling a pretty girl gets when she blossoms into puberty and turns out to be attractive. She finds herself the center of much attention. It must be very unusual for a teenage boy to experience this level of attention. It's probably a self-perpetuating cycle. They become trans, get massive amounts of attention. Some of the attention is of the wrong sort. I'm sure you know the sort of people who love Desmond is amazing. More on that later. What happens if Brianna changes his mind? How much social pressure will be on him if he gets bored of mascara and miniskirts? He doesn't want to be accused of being a transgender. That's wrong think. But should we respect their pronouns? Aren't we just reinforcing mental illness? What if someone has an alternative lifestyle choice that includes using heroin? What if someone chooses to be a prostitute? Should we applaud their courage? Are they stunning and brave? The Canadian news group, the Rebel Media, showed a bunch of fellow Canadians a photo of an obese model in a swimsuit. All the cuck Canadians said it was stunning and brave, or some similar drivel. The reporter even mentioned, hey, being this much of a land whale isn't healthy. She has to dodge Japanese whalers as well as cancer and heart attacks. But the Canadians wouldn't budge from their NPC chant, stunning and brave, and oddly enough, they commented on how beautiful she was. Go check out the video. She wasn't chubby, she was obese. I wonder if they would speak in similar glowing terms if it was an obese man. Somehow I have my doubts. My point is, it all ties back in with political correctness and the social contract. People want to be polite, but surely there must be limits. Encouraging drug abuse, obesity, and mental delusions just to be polite is madness. Sometimes, every time I respect pronouns, i.e. lie, the alarm bell rings in the back of my mind. Oh, Bianca, you'll just get used to it. But I'm not getting used to it. In fact, the alarm is ringing louder and louder. It seems that respecting pronouns has led to men using the ladies' room and girls' locker room in schools. Should boys who call themselves girls use the girls' changing room? What about in athletics? Boys who identify as girls are allowed to compete against girls, and of course the boys are winning. Boys are also winning scholarships to colleges that would have gone to girls. It begs the question, if there's no difference between boys and girls, why not just have open competition? Ironically enough, the boys who identify as girls would beat the real girls, but will lose to the boys because for some of them that's the reason they identified as trans, simply to win scholarships. Once you leave the path of logic, anything is possible. If one identifies as the opposite sex, there's nothing stopping them from identifying as a different age or race or even species. Once you change the rules by taking logic off the table, you can't then use logic to criticize others who identify as things they aren't. Remember Sean King and Rachel Dolezal? What about that 50-year-old man who identifies as a 9-year-old girl? Should he be allowed to play with other children? How far do you want to go to be politically correct? Will you let your daughter use a changing room with boys? Why not just do away with men's and women's gyms, bathrooms, locker rooms, make everything unisex? What about if someone is transracial? Should they get scholarships reserved for these racial groups? Or if someone is trans age, should they be allowed to have sex with minors? If you believe in feelings over logic, then yes. Should adults having sex with minors just be considered an alternative lifestyle? You don't want to be a bigot, do you? That's like OMG, being a racist. The acronym LGBT+ keeps growing. Should it include a P for degenerates who want to hurt children? Have we come that far that we're having that conversation? Apparently, we are standing on the brink and staring into the abyss. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, they have dancing boys. In America, we have dancing boys, i.e. Desmond is amazing. Young boys at gay clubs stripping for money. Yes, you heard that right. Is this just an alternative lifestyle that must be respected? People are so scared of the far left, the blue check marks on Twitter and journalists, that they are allowing behavior that should be considered abhorrent and despicable. Have we become too civilized? 100 years ago, the people cheering for a child stripping would be tarred and feathered or tossed in jail. The gay clubs would be burned to the ground. No, I am not saying gay clubs should be destroyed. But people in the LGBT are also on a bell curve. There are elements that fully support things like Desmond, child-adult relationships, giving children hormones, because they are a P word I can't say on YouTube. Use your imagination. How have we allowed so many of these P words? Because people are afraid to speak out against these vile predators. If you ask the far left, their position on these people who abuse the young, they get cagey and shifty. Will they condemn this behavior? No, because they feel it's a left versus right issue. They know the right wing is against hurting children, so the left feels the need to defend these abusers. It's a weird knee-jerk reaction. Dear alt-left, all of us can hate these abusers, then we can go back to fighting each other. The left needs to cut this cancer out because it's metastasizing. Desmond isn't stunning and brave. He is a sick child being pimped out by his mentally ill parents. Desmond would be better off raised by wolves. Did I mention he is an 11-year-old who strips on stage for money? It's essentially sex work. Can't we wait until they are 18 before allowing them to become strippers? Owen Benjamin said kids shouldn't be given hormones to suppress puberty, i.e. make boys look like girls. The effect of giving boys hormones, doesn't just delay puberty, it permanently prevents a boy from growing into his full height. It prevents his penis from fully developing. He will forever have a child's body. A boy who was given hormones wanted to have gender reassignment surgery as an adult, but his penis wasn't developed enough to be used as material, so he is permanently deformed and mutilated. Even sex experts say an adult should live as the opposite sex before having surgery. It reduces the likelihood of regret. The suicide rate for trans people is astronomical, before and after surgery. This should tell you that surgery isn't the answer. There is an underlying problem. I assume depression that needs to be treated. So what do we do with trans kids? We can do a study to research if the underlying problem is something other than body dysmorphia. Maybe it's depression. Oh, what's that? Universities have done studies, but LGBT advocacy groups have tried to shut this research down because it says that depression is a huge part of this, as well as being attention-seeking behavior. It's odd that they wouldn't want research into their condition. I wonder who is funding these LGBT groups. But that's a rabbit hole for another video. Anyway, I suspect that treatment of these trans kids with antidepressants and therapy would magically make the body dysmorphia disappear. What would happen if you took social media away from children? The trans kid phenomena would disappear in a puff of smoke. Feels like the adults have left the room. That is another rabbit hole. But let me say it's time for the adults, the moderates of both parties, to push back against the blue checkmark Twitter journalists like Joe Bernstein and the rest. This all circles back to respecting pronouns and my internal alarm. The image of the guy not saluting in the 1930s sticks in my head. I feel like we are blindly obeying our new masters, these far-left sociopaths on Twitter, these journalists who are actually advocates. But if this guy had the courage of his convictions, maybe we can find our courage and stand up against these degenerates. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below.